Hey everybody, welcome to the Dreamer's Edge podcast. I'm Dimitri, webmaster of dreamersedge.com and movie critic.
I'm Francois, public librarian extraordinaire.
I'm Eric, high school teacher.
And Chris, editor and sometimes writer.
So we're going to talk about Quantum of Solace, the second Daniel Craig James Bond movie, starring Daniel Craig. But it's actually, it stands out as a James Bond sequel because it's actually the first one that really is a sequel in the sense that it follows up the story of the previous film. In fact, it starts about 5 minutes after the previous film ended. And it follows Daniel Craig as somebody from an organization called Quantum tries to kill M, and Daniel Craig goes AWOL to figure out who Quantum is, and also maybe find out who killed his beloved Eva Green, who died in the previous film. Well, spoiler alert.
The spoiler alert's supposed to come before.
It was coming. We all knew. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, so the whole thing is like, is James Bond letting his emotions get the better of him, or is he still his normal reckless self who gets the job done through any means? And I actually quite like it.
Okay, well, you say you like it? You like it better than the first Daniel Craig movie, or?
Yes, actually, I like it more than Casino Royale for the simple reason that it doesn't have an hour-long poker scene that doesn't make an ounce of sense.
I know what you mean. I recently watched, just to go back to Casino Royale, I watched it again recently just to see if it held up, I guess almost 5 years later. I can't remember exactly when it came out. And it does, but each scene was remarkably long, and almost like, it could have been a 40-minute show, that I'd tune into HBO and watch. They're nicely done. There's a couple product placements. I was happy. Eva Green's beautiful. Daniel Craig's the stud I want to be. But by the end of the movie, I was hooked. I liked it. This was like James Bond rebirth. And the fact that Quantum of Solace started the way it did, like full throttle running, it lent itself to that green grass style at that point. Just like everything's shaky. But then it just kept shaking and shaking and shaking. And, I wasn't sure if I was able to hold on by the end of the movie.
Well, the thing about the shaking, though, I actually think it was a little bit better done than what I usually find in a Greengrass movie, because even though I found it was a little bit clumsy, certainly clumsier than the way Greengrass handles the camera usually, I still got a sense of geography when there was a car chase or whatever. I knew how far which car was to which, and I knew it was like, oh, the villain is kind of gaining it, As opposed to, like, Bourne Ultimatum, the final chase scene where they're in Russia and there's a bunch of cars. I didn't know whose car was where, who crashed into what. It was sort of like, I never had that problem with Quantum of Solace. I always knew what car was doing what at any time, even though the shaky cam was a little bit awkward.
You want a good car chase, you watch Ronin. But getting back to Quantum of Solace, I much preferred Casino Royale. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't... in the short story / novel, wasn't it Baccarat?
Yeah, it was.
In the book,
exactly.
It is Baccarat.
The thing is, like, here I blame, like, the current obsession of our society with poker, which, basically is available now on sports networks. So, hey, well, let's make it poker so people can follow along.
Yeah, it should be bridge.
It should be bridge. But who would be James Bond's partner, considering that he has no peer? Quantum Solace, to me, I wasn't really impressed, particularly after Casino Royale. It's kind of interesting. In the 70s, after Sean Connery, and even, in the late Sean Connery ones, you had the crazy masterminds who wanted to take over the world, and it really became a parody during the Roger Moore years.
Well, if anything, it gets back to the idea of parody with this one, with the group, and again, spoilers here, but you've got a group of super secret people from this group, and they all wear lapel pins to say that they're part of that group. It's a little bit silly.
Some people criticize the first Timothy Dalton one, which I personally think is still probably one of the greatest James Bond movies of all time, Living Daylights. It was a huge departure from the Roger Moore years. It's like, okay, we're going to go back to what James Bond was really about, which is like, okay, I'm trying to stop a gun runner who's trying to pit the United States versus, Russia, and there's all these international intrigue, but no big crazy Dr. Evil type mastermind, no giant laser, no giant plague to destroy mankind, no plot to just take over the entire world. Here we have the kind of really espionage and international intrigue that makes a lot of sense. Then you've got Mr. Regnan Steele, who basically fell back into that.
You mentioned the novella that gives its name to Casino Royale. The Quantum of Solace, I haven't read the short story. I think it is
very
based on a
different.
short story. I haven't read it, but nonetheless, I think Daniel Craig, at least, I guess, the way I read him, you know what I mean? I think everyone can read his face. It looks like it has been beat against a wall. I think he's my age, but he looks like he's like 10 years older. You know, just the lines on his face just speak to the character. What, you know, the novels, James Bond.
Well, the original James Bond character is a guy who's held together by practically duct tape. Like, this is a guy who's always constantly on the edge.
And adrenaline and alcohol.
Absolutely. Alcohol, women, and this guy is like, he's really on the verge of breaking apart. And you have Casino Royale, which is a return to the original source, right? The problem with Quantum of Solace is that they're starting to slip back into... They sort of want to keep that sort of hard edge of realism,
but
at the same time
a little bit silly because you've got a foot chase, you've got a car chase, you've got an airplane chase, you've got a boat chase, and
you know what?
I'm missing another chase in there, but it's just like it gets a little bit ridiculous.
I almost don't mind that.
Aren't they running through glass or something
Yeah,
like
you know what I mean? Like,
shattering?
It becomes too
A hotel in the
you know?
desert.
Well, but that quirk was sort of explained away. It was a base that was supposed to become a hotel. Although, whoever engineered that, I want to meet, because the first guy shot the entire building explodes. But
it happens.
Yeah.
I can kind of respect
the Bond for, you know, the geography. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's for sure. And, you know, and I'm happy to go do that. You know what I mean? I want to go and have every set piece in a different city, in a different country, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, you know what I mean? Like, the types of chases just get kind of like piled on one after the other. It gets a little bit topic.
Well,
but that's called a sequel, because the thing is they have to top themselves in the first movie. I mean, you're not going to see James Bond like sitting in a living room having a great sandwich, you know?
Depends what kind of sandwich.
Yeah. Especially when you consider Casino Royale open with him chasing a guy who does parkour and
exactly.
It's like,
That was
hard.
seriously probably the greatest James Bond opening ever. I just find that they're trying to, you know, have their cake but eat it too. You know, on one hand, we want that really awesome, realistic international intrigue, which isn't over the top, but at the same time, we're talking about this underground organization which is trying to, you know, steal water.
In fairness to that, because the movie has gotten a lot of flack about the stealing water thing, as if it was completely preposterous. I mean, that actually did happen in Bolivia. I mean, that's not science fiction. That was actually.
Well, and honestly, stealing water is going to be like a very current topic. Like, the next wars are going to be over they're calling it the blue gold there?
Yeah.
I guess maybe it wasn't so much
won by one blue-eyed man.
Maybe, maybe it's not so much the actual theme, but the execution. I kept expecting them to come up with something a little bit more intense, but you know, the thing is, ultimately, I can buy, you know, multinationals and this and that, absolutely, but then you've got this Spectre type organization just sitting in the background with its tentacles, and just, okay, we're back to Dr. No territory. You know, you can sort of have it one way or the other, but I felt that Casino Royale was really just very grounded.
Closer to, you mentioned Ronin earlier, I guess.
Yeah,
you know, like,
they sort of hint towards the end that there's this organization, but you know, in Quantum Solace, you really have this sense of like, okay, right, we're going to be having, you know, the Dr. Evil type individuals, and you know, we haven't gotten to that part yet, but hey, you know, there's another movie coming, so you know, we'll have to have the big bald-headed guy with the, you know, like, let's CGI Donald Pleasance back into it.
Because you're criticizing the movie for what you speculate will happen in a sequel that doesn't exist.
No, but they're already hinting at that, you know, that whole...
Well, that's the only thing that you can do, because the thing is, it's,
I don't know.
It's one of those things of, you know, when you're hinting at shadows, you don't actually see the person. You don't see the face or anything like that. So it's a lot more threatening.
Oh, come on. In the opening, you know, you've got this guy sitting there going, you know, telling the head of MI5 that, you know, there's this massive international organization that they've never, ever, ever heard of. And we've got people everywhere, you know, like, and they have no idea who this new group is. Like, seriously, come on.
I have no problem with that. I have to say, I have zero problem with that.
I think I'm coming across maybe sounding more negative, but, you know, I've got a big man crush on Daniel Craig, I think is what it comes down to.
Oh. So,
you know, because I'm really, like...
There's a lot of coming out here.
I'm just saying.
He's a big part... He's a big part of the reason why I don't give the movie a complete thumbs
down.
Some
of the best moments in these movies are when he exudes that confidence, where he kind of goes in, he'll say something, and he's a little bit cocky, and he still gets away with it,
But when he breaks
every
down.
James Bond has done that, but I like the way he does it,
My favorite part of the movie is probably his ride on the plane with...
that was
which, he just sits down, and talks about the drink, the Vesper Link.
Exactly.
That is, Daniel Craig. I'm not giving the movie a complete thumbs down, and the only reason I'm not is because of Daniel Craig. I was going to say the other thing that I thought was very interesting about Quantum of Solace is that there is this one, call it a chase scene, which is very, very unusual. And it's a chase scene in which you have, an older model plane, which is very slow, going up against a much better aircraft. That to be honest with you, is kind of an interesting... I have a history with flight simulators, so I can wax nostalgically about various air battle which I fought in France back in 1944. Yes, those were the days. But it's kind of interesting to this is the kind of scene that you don't see often ever. Like seriously, I'm hard pressed to even think of a movie apart from maybe Iron Eagles 2.
Oh my God, Frank! Moving away from that,
or was it 3? I'm not sure. I can't remember.
And back to you mentioned a little while ago, just the tentacles and this mastermind
Hydra
in the background, this Hydra. Maybe you know what I mean. Certainly, I see it. I think that's the hokiness of it, but I think James Bond, as it's been reincarnated, is kind of like a bit of a merging of the Jack Bauer character and the Jason Bourne character, and he solves everything from his awesome cell phone that does more than mine does, and he's just a little bit smarter and a little bit tougher, and he's just that much cooler than any of us are going to be. You know what I mean? But that's why we go to movies.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, for example, you've got this whole chase scene in the first one where he just tracks this guy down to Miami, and this guy's sort of is supposed to be a mook, but he turns out to be a fairly competent assassin, and it just turns out to be this really intense chase scene. Like, I can sort of buy those scenes a bit more. It's kind of interesting. It's very challenging. Actually, it's very unusual for James Bond movies because typically those early guys just show up and they're not really competent in any way, shape, or form. And my problem is with the overall organization. This whole like shadow puppet government thing, which again, all of a sudden, the CIA and MI5. I've never heard of these guys. Like seriously,
I think what you see in these movies is granted competence. You know what I mean, but also mostly when he goes up against people, it's not one punch and someone goes down. It's what it comes down to. So it's just there's tenaciousness, you know what I mean, that you don't see in a lot of these hokey movies, you see that in Casino Royale, like like these chase scenes, like you said, the parkour. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like it goes on for like 15 minutes.
But never mind the fact that the guy he's chasing is actually more skilled than he is. Which is, he's sort of like the guy somersaults over 3 walls. Daniel Craig has to like tear through them.
But even James Bond, by the end of each of the movies, he's battered. His knuckles are reddened. You know what I mean? Like, and you see the blemish on him also. You know what I mean? Like he can still put on the tuxedo, but he's got to change the shirt. And there's even a joke.
But that's the interesting part, right? Because that's why we dub he as a hero, because he is tenacious, and that's like he has like kind of like the iron will. Oh, I may not have all the skills, but at least I have the guts to go through.
My point, though, is that even the adversaries have that, is the thing. You know what I mean? They're, at least on a certain level, his equal in that they don't just fall down when he breathes on them,
Yes.
He doesn't, pull out the Rambo gun and shoot 500 people, It's generally 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, and he has to fight his way through. And there is a threat that they might actually outlast him to a certain level, which I kind of appreciate from these movies.
Absolutely. For me, Casino Royale was about introducing this character, and we got to spend a lot of time. And the second movie, Quantum of Solace, is about taking this character who's from a much more realistic world and putting him in the classic movie James Bond universe and see what happens. And I kind of like that idea. It's sort of... because he's a much more human character. He has all the character traits of James Bond, but it's sort of like his humor isn't as flippant. It sort of comes off more as a defense mechanism, a sort of coping mechanism. I think one of my favorite scenes involves him and one of his friends passing away, and he takes a dangerous risk spending time with his friend as he's dying. And as soon as the friend dies, his attitude changes because, like, the place for sentimentality has gone away, and like
he goes through his pockets and he goes like, "You don't understand." He'd be okay with it. He understands.
Yeah, and it's sort of like it's a switch on, switch off thing. It's such a fascinating character trait to have this guy who has that switch in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting to see him, how he deals in a world where there is an evil cabal and there is a mysterious villains that are bigger than life, it was sort of an interesting journey for me. I actually enjoyed that aspect of Quantum Solace. I don't think it was a problem at all. It was sort of like, this is our new take of James Bond. We haven't forgotten the 30 years of James Bond movie history.
But you know what I like though? Also, they kind of dispense with all the gadgets that Q would give him at the beginning. And it's like, when am I going to use this? And then, that was kind of like the.
Well, they
joke.
had a little bit of that in Casino Royale.
Just,
that little
tiny
gizmo,
bit.
But you know what I mean. Like, but there was that gizmo in the car where he could kind of set himself up and this and that.
Yeah.
But that was completely absent from Quantum Solace, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but
well, it goes back to from Russia with Love. I mean, the guy's main gadget is like this trick suitcase that has like a hidden compartment for like a few gold coins. and maybe like a knife. We're far removed from like Roger Moore's laser watch, which could cut through manacles.
But Eric, you're gonna say?
Yeah, this whole improv thing. I think it's due to the Bourne franchise. Like especially Bourne, like he has a pen and he can kill the guy that has the knife there. So I think this is
because it's a pen knife, right? Wasn't that it? No, wait. It's because he's a human.
I think it was
weapon.
a big.
Okay, maybe.
Another thing I want to touch upon again, because I like the James Bond character in Quantum of Solace more than I did in Casino Royale, is his relationship with M.
I was going to say, if we could talk about M also, because she's the only character actually carries on from the previous incarnation of James Bond, and I want to talk about maybe the difference in the way she's played it.
Dame Judi Dench, man. Judi Dench.
She plays a very open mother figure in this movie, and it's sort of a very sweet relationship. It's sort of like, it's nice to see James Bond relate to a woman in a non-sexual manner. And
but this woman has balls.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's James Bond wouldn't be James Bond if he could relate to any other sort of women, if you will. She needs to be that way for him to have that kind of relationship with her.
Yeah.
But it was sort of sweet. There was like a conversation in the airplane where he talks about her and the affection that comes through.
Mm-hmm. No Miss Money Penny anymore.
Yeah.
But it's also, I kind of get the feeling that Daniel Craig, what I like about him is you get to see like that little mischievous 12-year-old that he was. And I think M sees that as well, like there is this kind of mother or big aunt or something like that kind of says like, okay, I know you're a bad boy, but deep down you're good.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because the girl was like, is it your mother? It's like, no, but she likes to think she is. And it's such a nice telling line. It was great fun to hear that.
The Felix Leiter character is one that I kind of like too, and you can see that there's a very different approach in the development. I mean, now I have a much better sense of who he is. The closest I think is probably the Sean Connery years, probably particularly Goldfinger. During the Timothy Dalton years, he was kind of a photocopy, except maybe for License to Kill. But he gets his leg eaten by a shark. Oh, I feel bad for you, seriously. I remember that the actress who got killed playing his wife was from Three's Company, but that's a kind of a weird segue.
Frank, what are you talking about?
All this to say that I find that the new Felix Leiter is much more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy, he gives him a chance essentially to escape in Quantum Solace, but in Casino Royale, he just sits there going, we can give you the money, no problem. It's not a problem. Seriously, we'll make the arrest. I find that it's an interesting relationship, and the fact that they got into the whole, how they met and how they're developing this sort of, they have a grudging respect for each other.
It's an uneasy friendship for sure. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, like you have on one hand you have the personal friendship, but then you have like the loyalties, which are sometimes not very conflicting at all, but different interests, United States versus UK. It's kind of an interesting deal, absolutely. And I find that they cast the actor as a black guy, which is kind of interesting too. Like it's almost
he's
like
an actor. I can't remember his name, but I remember the first time I saw him was in Basquiat with
yes, that's it. Yeah,
David Bowie played Andy Warhol, and
Yeah.
I really haven't seen him in anything since. But I really
He's a
like him.
good actor. Like, seriously, I don't know what he brings to the...
Was he in Syria?
He was in Syria.
Syria. No.
Okay.
But whatever he does, I always think he's very good.
He's good, yeah.
I like his voice, too.
Yeah. Sorry, we touched on motherhood, but I guess just to go the feminist route for a second, the James Bond of yore was, more famous for betting women. In Casino Royale, he seduces a woman but doesn't sleep with her. The only woman he sleeps with is the woman who breaks his heart. And I don't think he sleeps with anyone in this one.
Casino Royale.
He does
he
not.
sleeps with the
married
chance
woman.
of death.
In
Casino Royale, he sleeps with the married woman at the beginning.
No, they don't sleep together. He gets her into the room.
All right, he says.
Just
yeah.
And then he leaves. He only wants to find out where her husband has gone.
In Quantum Solace, he sleeps with the redhead.
Oh, okay, right.
Man, the redhead, that's the best
The
we can do.
redhead.
What about a character name? Or even the actor's name?
And looking at the world through James Bond's eyes.
There we go.
Yeah.
No, Ian Fleming would have said the woman. So,
Yeah, but I like that scene where someone, the redhead, whose name escapes me as well, tries to control the Daniel Craig character and obviously can't. And when they walk into the hotel, he completely assumes authority and just kind of blows their cover. And, they get the best suites and this and that, but she's still kind of swept away with it, so it's still, it's interesting,
Yeah, no, he sleeps with a lot less women, this James Bond, definitely. But it kind of goes with what his character journey is. And what I like about Quantum of Solace is the big mystery isn't just the Cabal. In fact, I might as well spoil this. You get no answer regarding the Cabal. You don't. But it's the big question is he doing what he's doing for vengeance, or is he doing what he's doing out of a sense of duty? And that's sort of where the title comes from. Quantum of Solace is like the little bit of relief you get from vengeance. And it's sort of like, at the end of the movie, there's this great line at the end where he confirms what was really going on, and it's such a kick-ass line because it brings the entire action back to the character, the way we perceive him and the way he perceives himself. And I think it's fitting that he's not in a state of mind where he's going to be sleeping with a lot of women.
Sorry, the line being?
Yes, but I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, okay.
You don't want to spoil it, okay.
But if I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to spoil it either, it's the line told in the middle of the desert, right?
No, I mean when M asks him a question
Okay.
and he answers it. Well, actually, I can say what
Okay.
M says, and I won't say what he says. He says, "It's good to have you back, James," and he answers something back, which tells you exactly what his
that's
actual
right.
state of mind.
I don't think I remember that.
Because he goes and there's the Canadian spy.
Yes.
Aha. Yes, the next one's starting in Moscow. Well, but you see, they touch on that a little bit. It goes back to the end of Casino Royale and the whole, West Berlin is dead, and M's like saying, are you alright, and this and that, and James Bond goes, the bitch is dead, right? He dismisses West Berlin as an agent, but does he really? And that's, essentially, it's kind of interesting that essentially you can almost find the premise for Quantum of Solace in that final scene, absolutely,
Yeah.
So, and you get the answer at the same time.
Well,
So.
she's certainly the phantom limb that follows him around, for sure.
But it's kind of interesting. I mean, I do believe that the character was originally conceived like that. Now, if you really want to get technical, let's go with let's go back to George Lazenby and Emma Peel in Majesty's Secret Service, the one woman that James Bond married.
I think that's my favorite James Bond until Daniel Craig.
Seriously, it's not a bad one. It's not a bad one. Never mind that Telly Savalas is in it. So, seriously, come on, man. Right off the bat.
He was only cast because basically Sean Connery is asking for more money, I think, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
And
We're still
Lazenby,
reviewing
you
the
mean.
wrong movie.
We're reviewing the wrong movie. Okay. Next podcast, I'm sure, in the future.
All right, so rating?
Rating. I'm going to give it a B-. It meets personal expectations, but only hardcore fans of the genre are likely to appreciate it. Yes, I'm being harsh, but Daniel Craig saves it for me, so.
All right.
For me, I'm going to go maybe higher than you'd expect. I'm actually going to go A-. I think this movie is pretty great. It satisfies on an emotional level the way a lot of action movies don't. As much as the shaky cam at the beginning, I really found, though you said that you could understand what was going on with the cars, maybe it's the fact that I don't have a driver's license. I didn't know what was going on. Nonetheless, by the end of the movie, I had been tutored in the way the camera was going to be working, and I did like it. And the emotional development and arc of the character, I'm there for number 3. And I think this was a strong number 2.
I'm gonna go with the same as Frank, B minus. I think it's passable. Yeah, it was okay, but it was kind of, I watched it after. I'm like, eh.
In the aftermath of Casino Royale, for me, that was it. I mean,
I guess
expected
it didn't
things.
meet my expectation as far as the sequel, just because I was expecting a bit more. And sometimes it can be interesting where, your expectation, and then you get the movie and you're like, oh, okay, that was an interesting journey.
It's no Die 4, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. No, it left me pretty indifferent.
It's funny 'cause I actually liked it a hell of a lot more than Casino Royale, so I'm gonna give it a B plus. I'm taking points off because the action scenes I found were a little bit awkward. I think it's a director that's adopting a style that's not his, and you can feel it quite a few times. But in terms of the character development, I think, as you pointed out, it's not something we get in the average action movie. People praise the Bourne movies for the character, but honestly, I think Quantum of Solace runs circle around what they did in the Bourne sequels, and that's the direction I want for future Bond movies, definitely. And that Russian chick is kind of hot.
She's no evergreen.
That's true. She's not evergreen.
We'll find out in the next movie.
Ready?
And on that note, if you have any questions, comments, you can write us at mail@thedreamersedge.com or post a comment at thedreamersedge.com. Just click on the episode's name and find the article. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on iTunes. Please write a review if you can. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.